After over 25 years, we've got a new I Know What You Did Last Summer movie in theaters. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Let me know what's your excitement level for I Know What You Did Last Summer, and if you've seen it, what did you think about it? Now, to give you my history with the franchise, my favorite horror franchise of all time and my favorite horror movie of all time is Scream, written by Kevin Williamson. I was in high school when those movies came out, so that whole Kevin Williamson flavor of horror films were the ones that came out during my formative years, so I've always loved them. And his kind of follow-up to Scream was I Know What You Did Last Summer. But somehow, I never watched I Know What You Did Last Summer, despite it being written by Kevin Williamson, despite it starring, a who's who of late 90s high school movie stars. I didn't watch the movies until just a few years back when the TV show came out, and I was like, I should probably watch the originals. And so I finally watched them a few years back. So this is an interesting franchise because while it's not one that I watched back in the day, because of the nature and the flavor of it and who stars in it, it's like I have nostalgia for a thing that I didn't actually experience way back in the day. And even them doing a legacy sequel with Jennifer Love Hewitt, Freddie Prinze Jr. has that flavor of, hey, they're coming back, despite that not really meaning all that much for me in the context of this specific franchise. But those were a couple of the big, gigantic high school movie stars when I was in high school. All that said is my point of reference going into this. Let's get started with the good. And as someone that doesn't have deep ties to the original film or hold it up on some big, gigantic high pedestal, I thought this was pretty good. A solid legacy sequel in most regards, where I don't feel like I Know What You Did Last Summer actually sets up a franchise. The nature of the story with the fisherman, the twist, the reveal of the original film is a pretty contained story that you have to stretch things to try and do a sequel. And watching I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, I was like, okay, this feels pretty far-fetched. And then the direct-to-video, I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer is just dreadful. But this movie, taking place nearly 30 years later, it builds on that concept of the legacy of the events of the original film and have on this town and what the city's done since then, in particular with someone coming in trying to rebrand the entire town. And it builds it's a legacy sequel, but it builds that concept of legacy into the actual plot itself, and thus cutting its own path, finding a way that you're sort of able to actually do a legacy sequel to a movie that in and of itself I don't think is a great foundation for a bunch of sequels. Like they found the right kind of space with time passing that allowed it to take place. One of the things that I think made this movie work for me on certain ways is that it borrows a little bit more from Scream than even the original I Know What You Did Last Summer. This one is much more overtly a whodunit. The original I Know What You Did Last Summer had intrigue of like, okay, who's this person that was hit and what happened and the mystery of who's following. There is that, but there's not this full-blown whodunit with a bunch of overt red herrings the way that Scream does that. In this movie, because of the nature of the plot and the way that it plays out, it's much more of a whodunit. And you're not sure who you can trust. You're not quite sure everyone's motives and what's kind of going on. And I think that serves the movie well, in particular, like I said, in this context where it is about the legacy of this town, where there is a kind of a broad conspiracy. And so there's a bunch of different angles that you kind of approach. Why on earth is these killings starting again in light of the incident that happened last summer? So I just feel like they found a good way to continue it that made me go, all right, I buy into that enough. Are there logical lapses or do they cheat something? Of course. But the basic setup, I was like, I buy into it. I think you found something that works here. Now, when it comes to the cast, it does, the main stars of it are a new generation of, 20-somethings. are people that did something last summer and are returning legacy characters, are side characters. They're not just cameos. They have stuff to do. They kind of have their place in the story, but they're not the ones driving the narrative forward. They are side characters with important things to do in the story. Are new people. I thought that in certain ways they were less irritating than some of the original people. Ryan Felipe, in particular in the original one, is kind of a really insufferable character. And they have their equivalent in this movie that has the same destructive, irritating tendencies, but he is kind of more charming than Ryan Felipe was in the first movie. And so I like them well enough. It's always tough to know which kind of, when you watch a movie like this, you don't always know who's going to still be around decades later. In 1997, we didn't know that all of those people would still have careers 10 years later and then 30 years later. And we didn't know that, one of them was going to be Buffy the Vampire Slayer and stuff like that. And so, I don't know what their careers are going to look like, but, they did a good enough job without, none of them wowed me. There wasn't the one that I was like, man, this person's amazing. I'm on the lookout for what they're going to do. It's just kind of yeah, everybody did a good job. And when you have those returning legacy actors and, you're my age and you're seeing people from high school movies that I saw back in the 90s now and we're in our 40s, it gives you the nostalgia if you're me. It works well enough, even though I'm not specifically tied to this movie. Them in general, it's hey, we're all still around. You're still telling stories. I'm still watching the stories. It's kind of nice. And just they treat the events of the original film as actually affecting these characters, that their lives have kind of been altered and you catch up with where they're at and how each of them responded to what happened and everything like that. And so, without overdoing it, they don't go full Halloween 2018, Laurie Strode's in a compound. They don't do anything like that. But the events changed them, and each of them picked their path and how they responded to it. Another fun one in here, Billy Campbell's in here. He was the Rocketeer back when I was growing up. And so I watched the Rocketeer 1,000 times back in the day. So anytime he shows up in anything, it's fun. And once again, he's a side character, but an important side character. He's the person in the story that basically reshaped the town. And so he's in the middle of everything that's kind of going on, and so kind of it really important to the story and pushing things along. So just nice to see him show up, even though he doesn't have a ton of screen time. I enjoyed getting to see him. As a slasher film, there's a pretty steady set of kills and a little bit, maybe kind of some variety in there of a few more kind of weapons used along the way, and so a couple nice kills. This isn't a franchise known for super creative, wildly inventive kills or anything like that, so I wasn't expecting a ton of interesting stuff, but you get some that made you go, ooh, certainly squirm a little bit, or they linger on something so you feel the pain of it. So, it provided the slashes that I wanted, had a nice conspiracy to it, and it was nice to see the original cast kind of return. So as someone that didn't really have big, high expectations, that I'm not I don't have any strong emotional connections to this franchise. It's just did I get a good slasher that had some twists and turns to it? Yeah, I did. It worked well enough for me. There's a little bit more to talk about here. Let's move on to the mixed aspects of the film. And here, there's really just one thing I wanted to talk about, not good or bad, but it's the question everybody asks when it comes to these things. Does I Know What You Did Last Summer have a mid or post-credit scene? Yes, it has a mid-credit scene that you need to stick around for. In particular, if you're a fan of the franchise, it is a must-watch, both in terms of having a fun little surprise for fans of the franchise, showing a little bit more, grander context of the aftermath with the film, and potentially teasing what's next. It does all of the things that you want a mid-post credit scene to do to, really be a big important one. It kind of does all of them, which I didn't realize you could do that with I Know What You Did Last Summer, but they found a way to have one that was oh yeah, you have to stick around to watch this if you're a fan of this franchise. With that said, let's move on to the bad. And I'd essentially say that I feel like this movie kind of continues what's always been the legacy of I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is to say it's the other horror franchise. It's the other slasher franchise from Kevin Williamson. It's not Scream. It's nowhere near as good as Scream, which was groundbreaking and was a Wes Craven project and led to this big, gigantic hit franchise that, has continued strong. It's the other one. Like, yeah, he did this other one. There was a couple of movies that went to theaters, and this other one that direct-to-video is terrible. It's the other one. It's good enough. It's nice. If you want a little Kevin Williamson slasher stuff, that's what this is. But nothing really remarkable, not nearly as groundbreaking, not nearly as clever. It's not as funny. It's not as anything as Scream. And that's kind of the nature of this movie. If you're a genre fan and you just want like a well-made slasher, you'll get that here. That you'll get some kills, some characters you have a little bit of fun with, a little bit of nice nostalgia with characters returning, a whodunit. But is it breaking any new ground? Are there amazing kills? Is there anything that this movie does that makes it like top tier amazing? No, it doesn't do anything particularly remarkable. It's just like another well-made, serviceable enough, slick slasher that maybe has a nice city conspiracy and some whodunit to it, but nothing particularly fantastic about the film. Other thing you really got to talk about with this movie is, as a whodunit, the final reveals did not work for me. They were not overly satisfying, and I would really say that if they'd really stuck the landing, I'd probably be like, the language of all of this would be like better, stronger, and we'd bump this up a number of spots when I finally grade it. The final reveal was like, okay, I don't fully buy into that. That's not fully satisfying. And there's some stuff in here that absolutely very interested to see the comments section in Twitter and forums and everything this weekend as people discuss this movie and kind of where it decides to go. A lot of people won't like it. The people around me, one guy that I talked to after the movies that loves this franchise, he loved the ending of this movie. The guy I was sitting right next to, he said it killed the movie for him. Polarizing is the exact word for it. I was probably in the middle. It didn't kill the movie for me. I just didn't think it really worked. I didn't feel that they set up enough of the things to make this pay off or feel earned. So for me, the ending was one of the weakest aspects of the film. And when you're doing a whodunit, unfortunately, that kind of really does pull your movie down a good bit. Remember to join me down below in the comments section. Let me know, what did you think about the film? Also, I've done 1 zillion horror rankings. I've talked about almost all the main franchises, in particular the slasher ones. Talked about Scream extensively. So if you want to know my thoughts on the Scream movies or any of these other iconic horror franchises, check out this playlist somewhere around here. Overall, I thought it was a solid slasher that I enjoyed the ride along the way more than the final destination that we got to. It's not breaking any new ground, but it did deliver the thrills that I want from one of these movies. Overall, it's a B- on the entertainment scale, a 6.5 out of 10. And you could probably just wait to stream this one if you're interested. But if you're worried about spoilers, you probably need to rush out to the internet so that, the whodunit and all that stuff doesn't get spoiled for you and everything. All the twists, the turns, the cameos, the post-credit scenes, all the things that could potentially be spoiled, I'm sure will be on the internet by Sunday. So maybe if you're worried about that stuff, you do need to go see it in the theater. But as for the quality of film itself, you probably could wait on this one. Check out those other horror videos somewhere around here. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.